Today, we're diving into a document that, honestly, it raises a really uncomfortable question, one that a lot of companies probably don't want to think too hard about.
Exactly. How much does that cheap connection really cost? Welcome to a new deep dive from Strategic Labs. We're breaking down the hidden risks of corporate travel routing, and we're basing our analysis on Federico Shenona's work, Corporate Travel Security. As always, remember you have the original links in the description.
All right, so let's set the stage. For years, maybe decades, corporate travel has been a numbers game, right? It's all been driven by one single metric, cost. The mission is simple: get the traveler from point A to point B for the absolute lowest price possible. But this creates a very dangerous illusion. And that's the core trade-off right there. The promise is so tempting because it's clean, it's immediate, you save a few $100s, it looks fantastic on a spreadsheet. But the reality is, the risk doesn't just vanish into thin air. It gets pushed from the controlled corporate environment directly onto the employee while they're in transit. You know, this quote just cuts right to the heart of it. It transfers it. That's the key. This isn't about throwing budgets out the window. It's about understanding that when you prioritize price above everything else, what you're really doing is making a risk transfer. And that risk becomes the traveler's problem to solve, usually when they are most vulnerable and least prepared to handle it. So what happens when this decision, this purely financial choice, meets the real world? Let's trace how these supposedly optimized itineraries actually hold up under a little bit of pressure.
This sequence of events is almost a cliché because it's so predictable. You pick the cheaper, more complex journey, which means it has more points of failure. So a tiny weather delay on that first leg, it's not just an inconvenience. It kicks off a domino effect. The tight connection is missed, and just like that, your employee is completely stranded. And that leads to this critical situation: the forced overnight stay. Now the traveler is totally off script. They're in a city they didn't plan for, with a risk profile nobody has vetted. They're suddenly cut off from all the support systems, the pre-screened hotel, the trusted car service that are the bedrock of a company's duty of care. That legal and moral responsibility for their safety is now on very shaky ground.
And we have to remember, this isn't just a logistics headache. It's a deeply human problem. When an itinerary falls apart, it doesn't just waste time. It inflicts a real, measurable physical and mental toll on the traveler.
Travel fatigue is such an underestimated risk factor. It's not just about feeling a bit sleepy. We're talking about a serious cognitive decline. Your situational awareness drops, your judgment gets cloudy, and you become a much easier target for anyone looking to exploit a tourist. Scammers, thieves, they're pros at spotting someone who's exhausted and disoriented. And think about it. So many of these cheap, multi-leg flights push the total journey time way past the 24-hour mark. Now you add the stress of a missed flight, the scramble to find a hotel. At that point, a traveler's cognitive and physical resources are basically running on empty. Which leads to this really critical question for any organization. If the company's choice of itinerary created the conditions for that extreme fatigue, and then that exhausted employee makes one bad call, hops in an unlicensed cab, for instance, where does the responsibility truly lie? That's the dilemma at the very core of duty of care.
Okay, so this all brings us to the final impact. We need to recalculate the cost, but we have to look way beyond the ticket price to see the true financial and operational exposure we're talking about.
This chart really says it all, doesn't it? I mean, look at the scale. The savings might be a few $100s, but the potential cost of just one incident, medical bills, a security response, lost productivity, not to mention legal liability, can easily top $10,000 or more. That initial saving, it's not just small, it's completely irrelevant in comparison.
So when you follow this chain of risk all the way to the end, you arrive at a fundamental shift in how you have to see this. It's not a transaction. It's not like buying office supplies. It is a critical risk management choice. Period. Every single itinerary is a strategic decision that defines your employees' exposure to risk, their resilience on the road, and ultimately, their safety. That has to be the lens through which these choices are made.
And this final quote just wraps it all up perfectly. True efficiency is not to pay less, but to be prepared when the price is no longer the most important thing. It really forces us to ask, is our travel program built for spreadsheet efficiency, or is it built for real-world resilience? We have reached the end of this extensive analysis. If it added value, share and subscribe to Strategic Labs. See you next time.